The Iranian Revolution of 1979 was a monumental turning point in Iran's history, remodeling the nation's government system from an authoritative secular monarchy to an Islamic republic, and igniting a battle for reform that would span generations. While the revolution succeeded in overthrowing the reigning Shah, it failed millions of female Iranians, betraying their vision of reform and triggering a chain reaction of oppression and resistance. Women actively participated throughout the rebellion, believing that the overthrow of the Pahlavi dynasty would finally lead to more equality and rights, a democracy. However, once the dictatorship collapsed, extreme traditionalists took hold. In a country that had declared hijabs forbidden just 40 years earlier, they were suddenly made mandatory. Heavy constraints halted women's access to education and restricted their participation in the workforce. Equitable family protection laws were repealed. The Iranian Revolution, a movement where citizens were hoping for rapid expansion of their civil rights and freedoms, had actually led to a huge step backwards for women's rights, which sparked years of activism and an ongoing battle for reform. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the final Shah of Iran, came to power in World War II and was an autocratic ruler who was educated in the way of the West. As a result, he embraced women and their contributions to society, despite the hard-coded Islamic law and the strong patriarchal culture. In addition, throughout the Cold War, Iran had a strong alliance with the United States. This meant that Iran received support in many different areas, such as funding for the military and the push for further modernization of the country. This pervasive westernization defined the state of Iran and planted the seeds for revolt in the minds of the more traditional Islamic men and women. On January 26, 1963, the Shah launched the White Revolution, a series of rapid modernization reforms that included raising the legal marriage age, granting suffrage, and pioneering a literacy campaign. Many women accepted these reforms as they envisioned a path to equality, yet others grew unsettled, realizing the Shah's deviation from Islamic cultural norms, planting the seeds for revolt. Nevertheless, this modernization facilitated the election of Iran's first 6 female members of parliament, and women's representation in higher education tripled from 8% to 33% of students. One Iranian mother reminisces,
I was well educated, I had a good job in technology.
To the West, it seemed that Iran had overcome its strict social mandates and had become a haven of equality for women in the Middle East. These apparent advances, though beneficial for Iran's economy and Western relations, were soon to cause a destabilizing reaction in the fragile Iranian society, as there was growing discontent with the shift away from traditional and religious ideologies. These apparent advances, however, were soon to cause a destabilizing reaction in the fragile Iranian society. Some conservative women felt a loss of their identity and sought former tradition, while other Iranian women were fighting to keep their rights but to end the dictatorship and adopt democracy. These two different groups united under their shared hatred of the Shah and gave significant power to the revolt. On January 7, 1978, in a nation built up with tension, the government published a defamatory attack on Ayatollah Khomeini, an exiled scholar who represented traditional Islam. Thousands of men and women gathered to peacefully protest. However, security forces violently cracked down, leading to an estimated 40 to 200 deaths. Women were pivotal because as they mourned after the traditional 40 days, again authorities used force. This greatly increased tension and civil disobedience as it highlighted the immorality of the Shah for his willingness to massacre unarmed and mourning women. One key group that pioneered the resistance was the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran. Fatima Amini, a member of this group, became a beacon of resilience when she faced torture by Soviet military police for 6 months and was eventually martyred for the cause. Her struggle resonated with millions of Iranians and was instrumental in gathering support for the revolution. Over the following year, tensions flared with worker strikes leading to economic paralysis and protests in the millions. On the 16th of January 1979, the Shah escaped, aware that his fit to rule was beyond repair. 2 weeks later, millions assembled at the Vadi Square as Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile. As a symbol of defiance and solidarity, some women wore their chadar veils. Yet hijab or not, women of all backgrounds came together to herald the dawn of democracy in Iran and an end to the authoritarian regime. Ayatollah Khomeini, an Islamic fundamentalist, took the helm, and celebrations were made. However, they were short-lived. The coming years and following reforms would not play out as many had hoped, and women would react by mobilizing into a second season of revolt and resistance. At the time of the seemingly victorious revolution and Khomeini's rise to power, educated Iranian women were disappointed as they had been hoping for alternative leadership. Under the new regime, however, their rights as women were quick to spiral. One of the first acts was the repealing of the 1967 and 1975 family protection laws, which ultimately decreased the legal marriage age from 18 down to 9 and declared unilateral divorce and polygamy legal. Without these basic rights, women essentially only had value in Iranian society as an extension of their husbands. First passing as a decree to all government workers, then hardening into law, women were once again forced to wear hijabs. This sparked the first wave of protests in March of 1979, just 1 month after the Shah lost power. Women once again took to the streets, yet now they were fighting alone. The betrayed women chanted, "In the dawn of freedom, there's an absence of freedom, and we didn't have a revolution to go backwards." Public reaction to this new round of protests was violent. In March, the same people who had stood behind the women to take down the Shah attacked a group of female protesters with knives and shards of glass. As Iran relapsed, Khomeini continued passing new laws, redefining the role of women in the reformed Iranian society. While some women accepted this traditional hierarchy, many continued to resist the inequality and have entered into a prolonged battle for rights that transcends Iran and still continues today. The Iranian Revolution brought lasting change to Iranian society. Unfortunately, 40 years later, Iranian women are still fighting against the oppression and loss of rights that came directly as a result of the revolution. The compulsory hijab, legalized child marriage, and strict guardianship laws all remain in the legal system. The protests that began in March 1979 did not end, and every following wave of protests has had women at the front line, from the 1999 student uprising to the 2009 Green Movement. In September 2022, Mahsa Amini, an Iranian woman, died from her physical abuse in police custody after not wearing a hijab. Inspired by women's advocacy in 1979, Iranian women once again stood up for their beliefs with the Women, Life, Freedom movement, aiming to seek justice for Amini. Tens of thousands of women appeared in public without their hijab, effectively making the hijab rules unenforceable in Iranian society, although still in place on paper. This was a small victory for women and is evidence of their ongoing battle for reform in modern Iran. The Iranian Revolution also had an impact in other sectors of society besides women, including the LGBTQ+ community and other minorities. Based on the Islamic Penal Code enacted in 1991, homosexual acts are now punishable by death in Iran. The country has had the most state-sanctioned executions of homosexuals of any country, estimated to be in the thousands. The marginalization and culture of fear inside Iran has also led to increased emigration. Today, only 10% of university graduates studying overseas actually return to Iran, compared to 90% before 1979. This loss of the educated class in Iranian society, the brain drain, has had significant economic impact, such that an estimated 30% of the population now live in poverty, despite Iran's substantial natural resources of oil and gas. At the same time, this exodus has also raised awareness for women's rights outside of Iran and enabled many other voices to join the fight for gender equality. The Iranian Revolution brought reform in the political arena, but division in the social arena, thus highlighting the need for revolutionary movements to listen to all voices in order to build a just, inclusive, and successful society. Much was lost by not listening to the voices behind the veil in the Iranian Revolution. But will we listen to these minority voices today?